Hey, whole people. This is Shelby, one half of your host team of your creators of Deep Holes podcast. The following episode is a bit of a time jump. This is one of the first things that we ever recorded from the podcast, for the podcast, sort of as just kind of a deep dive into who we both are. Shelby, this is Shelby speaking. I'm an astrologer, so I use natal astrology in almost every aspect of my life. So I wanted to read Victoria's chart before we started really formally working together, and we've been friends a long time, and it's my way of knowing more about someone or knowing more about what they might be working with is looking at their natal chart. So the following is an interpretation not just of her chart, but I do a little bit of mine, and we just do kind of catching up in general. So, we'll see how this goes. There may be more astrological content in the future. So, we'll see. I hope you enjoy. Capitalism, which has been driving this educational disease from the beginning. Mm-hmm. It's really offensive that we should have to make these decisions. Deeply offensive. Yeah. So how are you doing on kind of the work front?
So actually, I had quite the development within the past 24 hours.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So I guess even last night I had a development after I talked to you last night.
Really?
Yeah, which is crazy.
Midnight development?
Literally,
literal
midnight development. So yeah, I've been talking to you about how I want to focus my work in more and not just be trying to get anything I can get that's gay, which is awesome. But also I was kind of I guess I don't know what it is really, but kind of comparing, my early 20s where I just made art and didn't pay bills, and that was super fulfilling, and I've made some of the coolest art I've ever made then. And the funny part is it's a little hard to measure because I was also a drug addict.
Yeah.
So it's that also probably had to do a little bit with not paying my bills and stuff. But also it was kind of almost like a medicinal Band-Aid of you can put your brain on a shelf and just focus on art.
And I think we've talked too about there being for you a sort of pressure around picking a medium or what have you. And I think you had previously named some of the self-medicating as coming from that and being a result of people insisting that you pick something when in reality you've been great at being sort of a Jill of all vibes. You've been, you know what I mean? You're not that's just not you at all.
Yeah.
So.
And those comments literally came during that time period and stuff too. And I don't know if the medicating was directly tied to that, or maybe it was subconsciously, but it was definitely something that was going on during all of that.
Yeah.
But I guess, and it's funny because previously, so when I've been comparing my career now or my art making now to back then, and it's being I wish I could just throw myself into the process more like I could back then. And then I think about like, yeah, being an addict and stuff, and how like maybe like in essence that was a negative thing. But then I think of now like, oh, actually, like, honestly, like I was probably overcoming more shit to make art and be an addict. Like, it's not, you know what I mean? Like
the way that you're, you know, like an alcoholic has to shower twice a day,
right,
so that no one knows,
right,
or what have you. Like, yes, absolutely. Well, it's a ton of work to be addicted to stuff, and it's, you convince yourself it's the only way, but that's
and it
part
costs
of denial.
money.
It's expensive.
And somehow I was still paying my rent, and then that's also the first time in my life when I had a studio.
Interesting.
So I was paying 2 rents,
yeah,
but not any of my other bills. You know what I mean?
There, though.
Yeah.
I've
Of course.
there. And
I
not
mean,
for, I think, addiction reasons, even just for
survival reasons.
Surviving. Yeah. I think, you know, I've been trying to defer my loans, or failing to defer my loans and just not paying them, and you know, just trying to keep the roof over my head, but skipping out on my phone bill every so often, or, you know,
I mean, that's
failing to pay the gas bill every so often. Yeah, it still totally happens for me.
So,
at least,
yeah. And I think that, like, so I was kind of trying recently, I've been trying to be like, find some sort of median between like taking advantage of like where I am in life and being like, yeah, it's okay not to be perfect, and like make art, you know, and like
totally interesting. Okay.
Not, I definitely don't want to like fall into some hole again or something, you know, like it has taken me a long time to get to the quote unquote stability that I have now.
Yeah.
But also being like, yeah, if you fucking are late on your phone bill, who gives a fuck? You know, like,
honestly,
whatever.
No, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, any of this should be cooperatively run anyway, because these are all basic utilities of life that shouldn't be privileges. They should be accessible to everyone.
But they're not right
Capitalism.
now. Yeah.
But it's more like, it's easy and really painful, I think, to go through the internal, just messy dialogue of, why am I not good enough to pay my bills? I'm fucking 30 or I'm 31 or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, and this kind of messy feeling of, why has it been this way for so long? Like, especially I think with addiction too, you think, oh, if I change my habits, like I'm this way with habits too, of like, I'll change my habit and then it'll fix everything. You know, like I'll stop doing this, and then I'll stop ordering $20 falafels in the middle of the night. Because I can't sleep because I'm hungry.
Yep.
And that'll fix it.
Yep.
It's like, no. Just taking that out does save me some money.
Yeah.
But it doesn't solve the root of the problem, which is that our labor is undervalued, and and we're even doing fine by comparison.
Right. Totally. Yeah. And then just like attaching to like redefining success for yourself or whatever, or like or rather like remembering, you know, because it's not like I define success by like paying your fucking bills on time. In reality, you know,
because you don't see someone else and say they're not paying their bills on time.
Hell no.
Although, is there a part of you that always does, and that is still relearning the true
1,000%?
Because I think I have that myself, of feeling the kind of lateral aggression of like class, and feeling like, oh, I'm trying so hard. I wish I was seeing someone else try hard and succeed better, or something, like, because then it would, I don't know, remembering value in a different way. So that's so interesting, because that relates to your chart to some extent too. So
all of that to say, I've been trying to work on that and trying to focus on that and trying to do things that like support that. And so I think I told you that I got that small business grant like a little while ago. Okay. I got an email last night saying we still have CARE Act money left. If you'd like to increase your grant amount,
oh shit,
fill out this form. So I'm going to do that. Right.
Fuck, dude.
So that's awesome.
That's in great news.
And I've been like stressing, trying to figure out like, okay, how am I going to use this to like pay for business stuff?
And can I ask, is this for the production company? Because you run like actually sort of 3 businesses, if you want to think about it that way, because there's you as a freelancer, there's the there's Flip the Script,
Yep.
which, nonprofit,
Yep.
but it's your business.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's like another category of just like creative projects, like the band and the TV show.
Yep. So this is for the production company specifically.
Oh my God.
It was like, since I live in St. Paul, I was eligible for like a small business.
And that's actually so interesting because it's a little bit less saturated just over the river there like that. And so that's quite
1,000%.
I mean, not that you're not also completely deserving, but
No,
that's
no.
also like, that gives you a slight leg up, and that's
Their
pretty
very
amazing.
first round, self-employed people didn't qualify.
Wow. Okay. So it changed.
So then the second round, they were like, hey, like, we've thought about it and we have money left. And so now, like, self-employed people or like people who work from home totally qualify. So I applied and I got it. It was
Dude.
a lot of hoops to jump through. But anyways, I got that email last night, and then this afternoon, right before I came over here,
Yeah.
I got that artist relief grant.
No way.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that in the past 24 hours, you just became, I mean, should I say the amount richer you got? Well, it's sort of an actually undefinable amount, because how much extra are you getting off of that small business grant?
So I'm going to apply for the full $2,500.
Yeah, do
Yep.
it. Apply for the whole amount.
Yeah.
Victoria.
Yeah. I like want to throw up. Like
You
that's
actually,
how
I can
feel.
see it now. Like, you seem disassociated in a way. Of,
Yeah.
like excited, disassociated.
Yeah. Like I'm
Is
here, but I'm also like
Right.
up there.
Holy shit. Holy shit.
So yeah, I've been like, it's one of those funny things too, where, before I got the small business grant, like
Yeah.
super stressed out about like getting my teeth fixed and stuff. And like,
Oh yeah.
and then I'm like, okay, well, once I get it, then I can spend the money that I was like also had in my emergency for like a computer so I can do my job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, so whatever. So this all cycles around, but it's classic like too, once you get money, then you're like
Say
kind
that
of trying to hold on to it.
Do what you can get money? Or
When you get money,
when you get money, yeah.
like then you're like, oh shit. Like, like if I spend this on the things that I need, then it's all gone.
There's the pressure of this, I think, kind of really BS idea that I think follows poor people around. Like I said this to my housemate, a few months ago when I finally got aid, because I had been in this weird 2-month limbo period of sort of not knowing, which it was shorter than a lot of people experienced, but still. And then I was richer than I had been in ever. Yeah, I had more money in my bank account than I'd maybe ever had. So
I never had as much money in my bank account as I have right now.
that's so strange, and I think that's something I've been talking a lot about like some people are doing so well in the sense of having more dollars at their disposal, but there's still this sense of fear and like there's the pressure to like really make it work for you, which
because it's not sustainable, because also I'm not working.
Sustainable.
Well, it's like,
and like that's why it should be that amount of money,
right?
But then it's very confusing. I think there's a real pressure. Like when I got all that money, I said to him, I was like, why don't you let me pay you rent through the end of the year? Because I'll just stay here, like, if that's cool with you. And he said, and I will never forget it because it was such a sad moment to me. He said, no, I can't really handle big amounts of money. I always blow it. And this dude's like an older dude, and I just felt like that is such a class shame based statement of I always blow it. You don't blow it. You're set up to fail.
right.
Like
right.
It's yeah. So just the level of self-flagellation around it, and I think feeling like, yeah, it's not. So I know what you mean about feeling like you're gonna throw up.
Yeah, for sure.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
That happened in the last. I wonder if we will be able to see that in your chart. Probably when we look at it, but that's really amazing, and I'm really excited for you.
Thank you.
And stoked. It's so well deserved. Like that honestly lifts my spirits so much to hear that. Like that's
It's very nice of you to say.
No, truly, like it's so well deserved, and I know I keep applying to that artist relief thing too, because
there are more cycles. Still.
I know, because I think you're right about you can apply every week, and
so
that's kind of
this
a good
time
one.
I got the email. I applied within 5 minutes.
Okay, you got the email that said no, and then applied again within 5 minutes.
I copy and pasted my shit that I had put in my past 4 applications or whatever.
So I was trying to figure this out. I was trying to solve this problem, and I couldn't figure it out, which is do they let you know if you demonstrated like need, like emergent need?
It's not. It's like if you no.
Because I'm worried I didn't make it sound bad enough, and I don't mean to say that like, you know what I mean? Like,
I do know what you mean.
Yeah.
I think it's totally just like supposedly lottery based, and like if you qualify as far as like artistry, you know, like they say like, oh, we're not funding like masseuses right now.
Totally.
Like shit like that.
I noticed on the most recent round they had said we're not funding magic. And then they took that off the list of things they're not funding.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's
so I thought
cool.
that was kind of interesting, because I do think of magic as an art form, because it's first of all, it's being creative with objects that are around you.
Mm-hmm.
Second of all, it's being creative with time.
Mm-hmm.
Third, it's interpreting symbolic languages and trying to translate them to some extent, you know, and it's like social and interpersonal. You know what I mean? So it's kind of, I think,
should be
extremely
included.
creative. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. But I understand, I think, why they would say we don't know what it is. So
Hard to
I think
quantify.
people are like, what is witch? Don't know. Can't qualify. Don't know. Yeah, I think that makes sense. God, I'm so proud and excited of you. That like makes me feel more
Thank
motivated.
you.
It's like
Please,
these little pieces
I want to
of
tell
good news.
everybody. Yeah, I want to be like, dude.
Totally.
Like, if I can get it, you can too. But it's so true. It's
I've been
like-
passing it around
Yeah.
like as much as possible. It's
Mhm.
kind of, it's wild too how few people know the resources that are available in Minnesota.
Yes.
There's a lot of that.
Mhm.
And a lot of it I think is not accessible for people who aren't necessarily great at like writing or communicating. Like that's
Yep.
another discussion entirely, but this one actually was. So
It is,
I don't
because
know,
it's
yeah.
like 400 words or less. So
Totally,
like,
totally,
and that's
yeah.
like the biggest, you know, it's
Thing
like
that you have to
2
do, yeah.
sentences, please.
And you're not being evaluated on merit, which
No.
I also think is like such a BS
Yes.
thing that grants do anyway.
Yep.
So, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Because merit is usually defined by...
how much resources you have?
Absolutely. Oh my God. How fancy does your shit look? How white does it
Or
look?
how well can you talk about it? Or
Yeah.
how many advisors do you have, like,
Yeah.
reviewing your application or whatever? Yeah.
Do you know the people on the panel?
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
What's that about?
Yes.
That's really good news. I wish you had told me that last night, honestly.
I didn't know.
because-
I didn't know until after I talked to you.
That's so funny.
I know. This all happened between me talking to you last night and then now. Which is insane.
That's good. Like,
Yeah.
I'm into this.
I'm into it.
So the production company is kind of funded for maybe like a half a quarter, perhaps more.
So, yes and no. It's like, honestly, most of the money is going to go towards a new computer, which unfortunately is a fuck ton of money.
Yeah, and you've
In
needed
order-
it for a long time, haven't you?
I've had my current computer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've had that one for like, yeah. When I bought that computer, it was like at least 6 years ago. And I think I paid like $3,000 or $4,000 for it.
Mm.
And it's lasted me a really long time.
Mm.
But like, you know, to keep up with all of the like editing software, and like I really wanted to be able to edit 4K footage.
What's that?
It's just like, it's even fancier than like HD. So it's like
Ooh.
really, really fancy cameras, and they're just huge files.
Your face when you said that, it's like really,
Really
fancy,
fancy
cameras, Shelby. Really, really fancy cameras.
I was
Shelby.
giving myself that face as well because,
really fancy.
you know, really fancy. Really fancy computers for really fancy cameras. So
Oh, I love that though.
literally my computer will just like die if I even
relate
right
to
now
that.
with HD footage, if I do like the edits and then I do like color correction, and if I try to do anything else on top of that, it's like, let's not do that.
I had to give up that contract I had with that astrologer to edit her sound stuff. I kind of had to give it up because I was even in thinking of looping you in on it
Mhm.
and getting you to like subcontract with me for her. I was trying to download the files that I needed to and play them through iTunes, but my iTunes was too old
Yep.
and wouldn't update
Yep.
because it's someone else's computer. So it kind of brings this idea that it's like a privilege to have a job.
Oh, yes.
To another level. Like, of course it's a pain in the ass and workers are oppressed, but it's also like, as a freelancer, there's this feeling of, oh my God, I have a job.
Right,
like, I have work to do and I can't, and I'm capable of doing it.
Yes.
Like I'm capable of finishing it and completing this task in a way that makes sense to me. Yeah.
Right. Which, like, there are a few places where you can like go and use resources, but at the same time, it's like, it's not the same as just like having your own stuff and like whatever. Yeah. So yeah, depending, probably like half or more will go to a new computer, which is terrifying. But if I get the extension, then I'm like, fuck it, I don't care.
No.
Like, I don't care. Then I can use this computer for hopefully like another 5 years or whatever.
Totally.
Yeah. So.
Right. And I think you'll be just excited about new equipment. Like that's matters a lot, and that's really cool. And
I've been doing a lot of animating, and like that takes up a lot of like rendering stuff.
God,
and that's
you do
like
so many mediums.
But they definitely like specifically animating. It's funny because I've always said like film. I think I dig film the most because it's a combo of everything. But then like animation is even one step on top of that.
Definitely.
Because it's like I like rotoscoping the best too, which is like essentially just like tracing like images or video. So it's like
cool.
Yeah. It's kind of like choppy. I'm trying to think. I can't remember the name of it.
So you trace an image and then you mash it together in an animated sequence?
Yeah. So like essentially
I could do that.
Yeah. You could. You definitely could.
No, I've always been like, how do I, because I have like a brain that will animate, but you know what I'm saying? Like my brain will do it.
Yep.
And I'm a huge like claymation and stop motion person.
Yes,
like, yeah, I love all that. But I've always been like, I can't really sculpt. I can't really draw. I can't really.
Dude,
like,
rotoscoping's a shit.
Dude,
it's
I
like,
love that.
Yeah, I started learning on Photoshop, which I know isn't like the best way to do it.
Sure.
But it's like what I had access to. So like 1 second of film, right? In general has 24 frames. So 24 still images in 1 second. So with rotoscoping, if you want like something that's smooth, like you can draw 24 frames for 1 second. Or if you want something that's a little choppier, you can do like less frames and stuff. So
that's so interesting.
That's kind of, the simple answer of what rotoscoping is.
I love when it's way fewer or when it waxes and wanes depending on the quality of the action. Like comic book, like graphic novel movement is so cool. God, that's so exciting. Man, I'd love to work on something like that with you. It'd be so fun.
I would love that. That's the other thing is like editing and animation seem to be something to definitely like hunker down into. Yeah. Like especially right now, like it's something that I can do right now.
There's someone I really want you to know about who's called Yumi Sakagawa. Who's an illustrator not unlike some of the other illustrators that we've been enjoying, who you got me that great gift that I'm using still and I love. And a little bit like Fran, but also they're a pleasure coach. So they do that and they're like a pleasure explorer. And I just think it's not unlike you. Like that's just definitely someone you should know about.
I can write that down. Yumi Sakagawa?
Yeah, and it's...
Are they Japanese?
I think so, yeah. And they're, I think out of LA.
Cool.
And they were just at the Modern Witches Confluence, which, it's really cool. And it was this, so they're an astrologer and a witch, I'm pretty sure, and then an illustrator. And then they have this whole business of being...
A pleasure coach?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. And it's like, they did a workshop on pleasure.
That's awesome.
And kind of understanding how your body experiences pleasure. And it really changed my life, honestly. Like, It really was... I don't know, fun and amazing. And they're a really cool person, but I think they're a little bit like you in that they have, 10 things they do really well. Lucky bastard.
Totally. Shut up. Yeah, right. Oh my God. Like you're not part of the club. The club.
The club.
Yeah.
What is the club? Like, like what's the name of it? I don't know. It's like talented.
Does a lot.
Fuck you to focus.
Do. Yeah.
Yeah, that's BS. Disassemble the male genius. Dismember the idea of the male genius.
That's fun.
I think it's fun. Well, we have your chart to look at. And then I wanted to look at the synastry between us, which I'm using synastry now, but And all that is when you lay one chart on top of another chart, where do the placements hit each other?
Cool.
That said, though, there are some drawbacks with synastry, because that's not really necessarily how relationships work, right? Some charts are a little more outgoing and active and have more of an effect on others, rather than some charts are a little more, they're less impactful in some contexts, if that makes sense. So there are some problems with synastry, so I just want to name that outright, especially when we're talking about like queer relationships or collaborative relationships or anything that kind of falls outside of the realm of like hetero amato normative marriage. Sure. So it gets a little dicey and complicated, and astrologers, like a wide variety of astrologers, have kind of named that as, I don't really use synastry and here's why, but I think for this context it's useful for us. But then we'll look at your chart, or we'll look at your chart first rather, and then we'll talk about it. And I'm really, I don't know, I just remember the first time I saw your chart and I was kind of like, of course, like you have some very striking, just, right away you have what's called a grand trine, which means you have, see that big blue triangle? Yeah. And see how it's kind of almost fractal in your chart. There's a few of them.
Oh, wow, yeah. It's like a star, kind of.
Right. So it turns it into something that's a little bit more like a star, which I think is very beautiful. Go ahead, yeah. What
can we, so, okay, first off, I just want to describe where we are real quick.
Oh, it's gorgeous, yeah.
We're at 33rd in Columbus. We're on this, like, circular wooden stage thing. It's a community space outside. It's like a pretty quiet block of the neighborhood. There are like these giant alphabet blocks that are fucking awesome.
Yeah.
And it's like just chilly enough that we can still wear like just a hoodie and stuff, which like kind of just reveling in. I just wanted to name that before it gets really cold.
It also shouldn't be this warm because it's November,
right?
In what's known as Minneapolis. So
yeah,
it shouldn't feel this way. Just to add, just never forget.
Okay, and then quick too before we dive into it, can we do even just like a little of a like, how did you both of our relationship with astrology?
Oh please, I love these conversations. This is like the ubiquitous thing that astrologers ask each other is like, how did you get into it? And it's
so amazing. I am not an astrologer in any way that I know of.
We're gonna find out. No, I'm kidding.
But I like astrology, I feel like, as well as like magic and stuff like that. Astrology is a little bit more on the outskirts of like, is astrology within magic?
It depends on who you speak to. Some people feel that astrology is purely predictive and is therefore not a magical art form, but is more like a science. And I don't believe that. I think I refer to it as co-creation with the cosmos. So to me, it's more like a spiritual behavior.
Sure.
This interpreting, we call it delineation.
Interpreting, yeah.
Interpreting, yeah. So we're interpreting a symbolic language that is has to do with the visible sky and the invisible sky. So in a sense, a birth chart is, just to do like basic what it is a map of the moment you were born from the place on Earth that you were born. If you were to look up and look down and be able to see the planets that were around you, it's a map of that moment, a snapshot of that moment. So yeah, to me, even though we weren't agentic in those moments of being born, you're agentic thereafter to some extent, to some degree. So to me, we're in co-creation with it, and therefore it's magical and not exclusively predictive. Yeah. Just to be a real nerd about it. Like, I'll probably do that a lot. Like, this is
appropriate.
Really boring. I think it's fascinating because it's just, astrology is so incredible. Like you can look throughout time, like it's such an old thing, and people were learning things about the sky just by looking at it in ancient places all over the world, and they were learning the same things by looking at it, and they were not in contact. We know they weren't in contact. That would have been impossible.
That's pretty wild.
It's it's one of those kind of wild moments of our development as a species
Yeah.
for me. Like astrology is just this, it's a wild moment. I don't know. It's a very, and it's been useful throughout time in different ways. So it's almost like you can learn so much, you know, like theater or art or anything, you can learn so much about the culture from looking at how people practiced astrology.
Totally.
I love that. Yeah.
So I think it's funny because whether or not I've like known what you're saying right now before,
Yeah.
like I definitely believe it in some, know it / believe the importance of it in some capacity.
Yeah.
But then also my experience with it is I don't have any like landscapes where I've gotten to explore it or like give it as much credit as it deserves. So
Yeah.
it's almost like one of these like outer like magic things where I'm like, yeah, I believe in it, but I won't like admit that to anybody. You know?
Absolutely. That's so what it is, because it's been banned sort of by the Puritans, you know, and we're still kind of recovering from that in a lot of ways. I just mean culturally.
Sure.
Yeah, and it is associated with witchcraft and, you know, alchemical, the spiritual shit. So it's like really dangerous. I mean, self-knowledge is really dangerous. you know, so it's if we're thinking of it just even from a self-knowledge standpoint, why would capitalism want us to know what's going on internally? Why would capitalism want us to have a map? Why would white supremacy want us to have a map of who we are, why we're behaving the way we behave? You know, that those things just want us with our blinders on. So
it's a very interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never thought about it.
So
like
it's always going to
before.
be on the fringe, I think, self-knowledge is. Yeah.
Okay, so then I'm going to ask you how you got into it, but also I want to state that I keep thinking of you as a green man right now because your mask looks like moss or like a tree.
I love
bark.
it. That's so...
Yeah.
I love that. That's like flattering right now. And it feels so beautiful here. Like the light is coming.
You're doing very well.
We're so lucky. Like, why do we... This is incredible.
Yeah.
It's so pretty right here and cute. I don't know. Okay. Thank you for the compliments. I need it.
Okay, so how did you get into astrology?
Well, I guess I could tell the sort of dirty story of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so is that what the podcast is?
Yes.
Is it? Is the podcast dirty?
Yeah.
So the dirty story is I was with someone who was essentially cheating on me. And I sort of knew who the person was, and I sort of thought that was what was going on. And I had said, you know, I really don't often think that I really often think we're not compatible, and I really worry that you're gonna leave me for this person, and I'm really afraid of that. And she kind of really brushed that off repeatedly. So I started looking into her astrology, and I was able to acquire the birth date of this other person.
Oh my God,
and this is really unethical. I didn't know that at the time, but it's unethical to do what I had done in a spiritual practice sense. So I've been trying to, in some way, atone or apologize for that.
Wow.
Yeah. If anyone's listening to this, please don't just get people's birthday and look at their chart. It's very personal and it's bad magic. And
I
don't
didn't know that at
gossip
all.
about other people's charts either.
Wow.
Don't be like, that person has 3 things in Pisces. Like, don't gossip about people's charts the same way you shouldn't. Don't talk shit, man.
That makes a lot of sense, but I never thought about it that way.
Right? I mean, like...
So is it a bad idea if we do celebrity charts?
Well, so that's a little bit of a gray area because it's so much of astrology has been like based on celebrity charts.
Sure.
But I guess I've learned recently, partly because of amazing astrologers like, you know, like Chris Brennan and Lisa Scheim taught me this. Kira Taborn taught me this. Where like, I feel like there's a way in which you can read people's charts that is a little less personal.
Okay.
And a little less prying. What I was doing in this situation of having my heart broken and feeling really taken advantage of, and very Pisces Venus-y, what's going on? I don't really know. Do I have any power? What's happening? That type of, and Neptune was moving on top of my Venus at that time. So Neptune kind of evaporates and confuses all meaning. And it being in Pisces, it's even more sort of, misty and squidgy and kind of half baked, and it was moving
Squidgy.
on top of squidgy. I might say squidgy a lot.
I like that.
It's like an egg, you know, those egg videos.
Sure.
Like the egg guy.
Yeah.
Love that egg.
Very good.
So
that was naughty.
that was naughty of me. I mean,
Okay.
it was, you know, I think it's different saying, okay, like, let's look at Mitch McConnell's chart or
Sure.
whatever. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like, I want to know
yeah,
why this piece of shit is this way.
Yeah.
Because, like, he's, you know, a public figure. Do you know what I'm saying? So,
Sure.
I don't know. To me, when you're a politician, you sort of sign your life over.
Okay.
But as a celebrity, I do think you're entitled to privacy, but there's also a way that you can read it with good boundaries that
Okay.
aren't, like, getting in there and
Sure,
talking
sure,
about
sure,
your
sure.
trauma, you know? So,
Yeah.
which that's kind of what we'll do with you today, too. Like, just, yeah, we could do, like...
We can get in as far as we want.
All right.
I'm putting
You're
that
like,
out
I'm
there.
into it. So...
So you
I had
started
done
there.
that. So I
Okay.
started there, and I started saying, wow, like, this person has this, and it interacts with, like, my partner this way, and that's kind of saying... They're kind of saying that they want that. You know, they're kind of saying they want someone who is incredibly conscientious and really meticulous. And then that drove me to go, okay, so what about my chart are they not saying they want? So I sort of coached myself through this idea of them breaking up with me and leaving me for this other person.
And it like being okay.
Well, it certainly wasn't okay with me.
Sure.
Partly because in the course of that, I had said, you know, I looked at astrology and I feel like this is what's happening. I feel like you're leaving me for this other person. And I do have a couple of signatures in my chart that predispose me to kind of play out my anxiety, to sort of manifest situations where
Sure.
my worst fear is realized. As do we all, but I think I have a particular power at that. Cool. Wow. Yeah. Great,
good.
Shelby. I love what you did. But at any rate, I think that was part of what was going on. And I had said, you know, this I think is what's going on. I looked at the astrology of it, and she was like, that's such bullshit. I don't know why you get yourself worked up over this crap. Like, you're being taken advantage of by astrology.
Wow.
Astrology is lying to you.
Whoa.
And I was kind of like, no, I think it's really useful. And she was kind of like, it isn't. She was an academic.
Sure.
So,
sure. And also perhaps lying to you.
absolutely. Why would someone want you to know yourself?
Right.
If it's not in their best interests, why would someone want that?
Right.
It's not something that's taught in our culture. It's not, you know, why would you know that? So, or why would they be down with that? So, God, I'm really bad with words today. Sorry about that.
No, you're doing great.
But thanks. That's nice of you to say. I guess that's how I got into it. And then I got deeper into my own chart and realized, like, you know, I'm not these gifts. These gifts are not really my gifts. So, and that's partly what astrology is, as I view it, is a practice of self-acceptance.
Sure.
And really trying to understand the great variety that is possible in human experience. I think that's underplayed. We think of things as good and bad, and
Yeah.
there's such a wide variety of what's possible and what's likely to happen. And so I think astrology is one way of understanding how to cope with that
Cool.
intense variety. God, that was longer. But that's how I got into it, other than the newspaper, of course, which is
Nice.
always part of it too.
Totally.
I think for people. You know, and seeing it like on gas station lighters. And I think from a young age, and this makes sense now knowing what I know about, you know, my own spirituality. I really was constantly saying, like, what is that? What are those symbols on the lighters or on those remember those little tiny scrolls at gas stations you could buy? They were like $1. That's sort of how I got into astrology. I don't know. You know, like a lot of people, a lot of people's stories like bad breakup.
Yeah.
And mine's kind of bad breakup too, but I think it bears being a little more specific about that, because it was like this moment of, okay, this relationship is telling me no to this thing that's really helping me.
Right.
And I think that's true of a lot of people. Like, they were dating someone who thought it was BS. Then they got out of that relationship, realized like, oh, they were so afraid of themselves, or, you know, or like they were so averse to learning new things. And that's what I didn't like. And then they get really wormhole into astrology. I mean, it sucks you in.
That's interesting.
It's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. You can spend just an inordinate amount of time investigating. There's so much to learn.
Right.
Yeah. So that is appealing to me for sure.
Okay. So I've never had my chart read before.
Yeah.
And you're going to guide me through my chart.
I'll try to give you a tour of your chart. And then this is something I always say to everyone before we do charts together. It's like, it's an honor to read your chart. So thank you so much, first of all. And second of all, like, it's my genuine intention to not do any harm. But that said, I can only see your chart through the lens of my chart, which is inherently flawed, limited. It's totally possible that I would say something that you would take on that would hurt really badly and cause you harm, thinking, oh, Shelby said this about me and that means I'm that really means it's true, or something like that. Like, there are myriad ways in which astrology can do harm, actually. And
is it weird that I'm excited to, like,
you're like, see
if that happens? Yeah, like, I'm like, go try.
Well, yeah, it's not weird. It's not weird because I think that's true. And we'll talk about that. You have an Aries Son. Like, I don't know, have you identified with your Son in the past? Have you felt like, yeah, I'm an Aries?
I don't really know what that means.
Okay, yeah. So that's what you just described, you just spoke your chart very well.
Okay.
That's a very Aries attitude to say, oh, I might do you some harm. It's not my intention, da-da-da. Mm-hmm. And Aries goes, fucking try me, So Aries is ruled by Mars. It's what's called the diurnal sign that rules Mars. So Mars is what's called in domicile in Aries. So it's in the place where it lives. Okay. It's his house, his, hers, theirs house. Mm-hmm. So that's what Aries likes. And Mars is to some extent about, I think, challenge. So we'll talk a little bit about Mars because it rules your Sun.
Okay.
And your Sun is just barely, because you were born just at 8 p.m.
We think so.
Yeah, we think 8 p.m., which it would be fascinating to get a better time someday because you are born, first of all, you were born the day that your ruling planet, if this birth time is correct, by, a half hour. If it's a half hour off, you might be a Cancer rising person, but you're a Libra rising person as I see it.
Okay.
So you have 27 degrees Libra rising. Each of the 12 signs have 29 degrees. The reason it's 29 and not 30 is that astrology was invented, this type of astrology that I'm practicing with you now, which is Western, traditional Hellenistic astrology with a little bit of modern thrown in there, operates on 29 degree chunks of signs.
Okay.
It used to be 1 through 30 because 0 wasn't invented when this type of astrology was invented.
Interesting.
So then 0 was invented, a useful, helpful number, a huge change. And I don't know the whole math history of what that all changed, but pretty significant change. So that's why it's 29.
Okay.
That's one thing. So we talk about 4 basic tenets when we talk about this type of astrology. We talk about signs, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, you know those. Talk about planets. We'll talk about like some of the asteroids too in your chart.
Interesting.
Which, there's unnameable asteroids. We'll talk a bit about the history of the naked eye planets, kind of why we use what planets we use in astrology. So I use the 7 traditional planets and the outer planets and some of the asteroids I'm new at using the asteroids. And then we also talk about houses. This is the third component of it. And there are 12 houses. So you can see on your chart there, it's kind of the slices of the pie. It says 1, 2, 3 on the outer wheel there. So those represent areas of the life. So if the first is sort of the personality and the body, the second is, the stuff that the body is given. So if you were to, birth a baby, you would give the baby a blanket. So I think it's Austin Coppock that said that, which I love that, is it's the baby comes out, that's the first house, that's the ascendant. There's this sort of extrusion of the personality that happens.
Okay.
Right? It gets pushed out, the personality. So the light by which your personality is doing that is Libran. So you have a Libra rising. So when you encounter others, the first thing that they encounter is your Libra self.
Okay.
So you can also think of Libra as the entryway to your household. If you think of the 12 houses as the house, the household, or a whole kind of estate on which you live, you can think of the first house as the entryway or the gate, kind of the battlements of your house. So that's Libra. Those are the houses. The fourth thing we'll talk about, and this will come into play a little more when we talk about synastry, is aspects. So that's the lines connecting the things, those cool fractal blue lines that you have. You have this gorgeous grand trine.
Okay, it's hilarious too, because originally I was looking at yours and I was like, oh, it's kind of a star. And then I looked at mine, I'm like, holy shit, blue.
Holy shit, yeah, it's even more. Do you see what I mean by fractal? Of it being like, so, but our charts look similar because we both have a grand trine. So we'll talk a little bit about that, about just what that means. So you have your sun in the 27th degree of Aries. It is what's called your sect light, which is the light by which your chart kind of functions. So it's your mind and your personality work in a solar way as opposed to a lunar way. Okay. So in a sense, your raw intelligence is linked up with the daytime, with things being out in the open, with society, what's in normative society in a sense. So we'll talk a little bit about what complicates that about your chart too. And then I wanted to ask too, so you have a couple of just nice what are called stelliums, which is a concentration of planets in any sign or house. So you have a bit of that in the 8th house to some extent, and you really have one in the 7th, though. That's your big one. So I wanted to ask you, what's your experience of partnership, and of both romantic and creative partnership specifically, being that you have Venus there? And this is where you keep your sun. You keep it in the 7th house in Aries, Okay.
So experience in partnership, like any more specifics, or just what comes to mind when you say that? Or
do you feel throughout your life, as you've had like privilege in this arena, has it been easy for you to, and I know a bit about your life, so I guess what I can say is I know you to have been someone who, for the bulk of your adult life, you've been in a romantic relationship. Yeah. Like, definitely. Yeah. It's not been always easy. Right. Like, they've been sometimes really terrible, but you have been in them.
I have more often than not been in a relationship in my life, been in a committed relationship.
Right, a committed one too. And that's not to say anything about the form or the or the person in the relationship, the form it's taken, because I also know you enough to know you've been with a wide variety of people, of different genders, and you've been differently configured in monogamy throughout that as well. Yep. So I think that's interesting that you have in your 7th house, which is the house of partnership and romantic relationship, you have 3 planets there. You keep your sun there. You keep your ruling planet, which is Venus.
I've never been broken up with.
Oh, what a privilege. That's so interesting.
Yeah, I do think it's kind of something that I just realized the other day, and I almost felt bad about it. Like, I was
guilty? Or what do you mean bad?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess maybe guilty or something.
Almost like, did it feel like, oh, I've lost out on an experience, or
no, it was just like
you felt bad that other people were experiencing that.
Yeah.
So that actually speaks your chart very well, the sense of taking on the burden of others. So we'll talk a little bit about that, because you have
I feel like that sentimentality relates to my relationships a lot. And also even when like there have been a few times breaking things off where it's like, okay, I know that I could keep working on this, but I know the best thing for you is to not do this anymore, even though you keep saying you want to. I know for a fact this is not
not
good
working
for you.
Yeah. So there's a sense almost of being keenly aware of what works for the other in the relationship. Is that how you would say it, or how would you say it?
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think ultimately in most cases it was definitely a like a me thing, but then I always am also measuring like I guess, yeah, is this something that person can actually work on or not, you know? Like,
I see. So you're almost evaluating the other person's, and I actually think I've heard you say this before too. It's almost like you're saying, is this person capable of being with me in the way that I'm asking?
Is this person capable to like keep growing and keep working on something, or is this like as far as it'll go?
Because it's never good enough. There's always something to work on, as opposed to it's never good enough, perhaps. There's always something to work on.
Yeah, like, is it like, are we not willing, like, compromise is a huge thing in relationships to me, you know, as far as like long-term relationships and like healthy ones.
Definitely. You have a Libra rising, you're a Venus ruled person. You were born on the day that Venus moved into Taurus, so that we call it ingressed. So you were born the day of Venus after having been not in a mate. It doesn't love to be in Aries. Aries is kind of about the self and about shooting up out of the muck of the primordial ooze and becoming the self. Whereas Venus wants to join up. It's the planet of value.
Sure.
So it's saying, I value you and you agree to also value me.
Yeah, totally. That's a huge thing for me, specifically in relationships. Because also, like, if there's something that you're not willing to compromise on, and also like seemingly I'm not willing to compromise on it, like, that's cool if you respect that, if that makes sense.
If we can be upfront about that being a part of the contract, the mutual contract. So the mutual contract for you can be any number of things. You're down if the mutual contract is, hey, we don't respect each other about this one thing,
right?
In a way, almost.
In a way.
Or what do you mean? Yeah.
Yeah. I think the most important thing in what you just said was like the mutual contract. Like, if we've talked about it and we have both decided to disagree on it, I can handle that way more than somebody like, you know, not having a conversation about something.
You're capable of agreeing to disagree.
I am in certain aspects, for sure.
That makes a lot of sense.
But like, if it's something that I find out that somebody's been like avoiding or like hiding, then I'm like, it's kind of like scarred beyond repair.
Yes. So you have a Virgo moon in the 11th house.
Okay.
You have your Virgo moon at 12 degrees. It's part of your grand trine in the element of Earth.
Okay.
So when you have a grand trine in a chart like this, and you know I have mine too, we'll talk a bit about that.
So the grand trine is the triangle, right? So for me, it's like the blue stuff.
It's the blue stuff, and the one that I'm looking at is the one that involves your moon in Virgo at 12 degrees.
Okay.
Because you have 3, you know?
Yeah.
But the one I'm looking at, you have the moon in Virgo at 12 degrees.
Okay.
You have Saturn in Capricorn at 13 degrees in your 3rd house. And then you have Mercury at 10 degrees in Taurus, there in your 7th house. So, okay. Where to even start with that? Oh my God.
I love it because I have no idea what it means, but I'm excited.
It's like so much data. Like, it's so much data. So,
wow.
Anytime you have a grand trine, I had and anytime you have a stellium in a way too. I had one astrologer who read my chart say, you know, and he was kind of like, you know, trying to tiptoe around saying this, but eventually he just came out and said, well, there's an arrogance to it. It's almost like you take for granted this skill that you have when you have a grand trine. Okay. So you have material skill in an earthen sphere in that area of the cosmology of Earth. You have in that element, you have privilege in that element. You're able to move and have stuff, accumulate wealth, accumulate goods. You're able to move money decently well, more so than other people. What you don't necessarily always have at your disposal is speed or quickness.
Very true.
Right? So, well, and I know that a little bit just from knowing about you, of like, I feel like it can take you a long time to make the right decision. And when you make the right decision, it's the right decision for you.
It's kind of either or.
Interesting.
And I think that, like, as of late, I've been working on the skill of like speed and confidence in like trusting myself in making a decision right away. And not having to just like sit on it.
So that makes me feel like you are a Libra rising and that this is an accurate enough birth time. Because I think with Libra, there's a sense of any movement will upset the balance. Libra is ruled by Venus as opposed to being ruled by Mars, which Mars wants disruption to some extent. Mars wants pursuit. It wants that like hunger and that the sense of almost like lack, like this isn't right the way it is, something's got to change. So that rules your sun at 27 degrees of Aries. That energy is what is ruling your sun.
The Mars?
Mars rules your sun because it's in Aries, right?
Sure, yeah.
No, you don't have to be sorry. No, it's like a lot of did you say sorry?
Yeah.
Oh, why? Oh my god, we're talking no, it's not sorry. So it's if you have a Libra rising, there can be a sense of, well, what's best for everyone. You know, you have the stellium in your 7th house. What's best for my lovers and my creative partners first, before I even factor in these are my wants and needs.
Yeah.
Then you're also going, what's beautiful? You know, Libra is justice and the platonic idea of justice.
Okay.
And it's those little corrections, like, you know how balance, like part of why older people lose their balance more is like because the small muscles start to not be as developed. Like the muscles that are involved with balance of like stabilizing are always moving. Actually, like our bodies are always trying to balance ourselves. So that's Libra. It's like small adjustments all the time that are helping the other person feel good. You know what I mean? So when we're saying that, I think for you that plays out in the area of relationships to some extent.
1,000%. Yeah.
You're like, well, you know, and you have a Virgo moon, so you're going, well, I guess maybe I'll try this, you know, maybe this will work or whatever. And it's, okay, that doesn't really work for them. Okay, I'll make another small adjustment, you know. Yeah, there's a tendency, I think, with this, a strong tendency, and I guess I know this partly because I know you, to take on the burden of others and to shoulder the burden of others.
Yeah, like I almost feel like it's easier for me to do that than ask people, or then like to have them do that themselves at times. This
is a Virgo moon.
Right.
This is having a Virgo moon. That's exactly what you just said. And in a sense, it's for you, your job in the community. So I don't want to downplay it as like, oh, this is hazardous or this is annoying. But it's also like when you're helping others, what are you not helping about yourself? That's something you always need to, what problem am I not fixing that I have?
Right.
That I'm not allowing to take up enough space, because you're going out into your 11th house, which is your community and your hopes and dreams, and you're going, these people have this, these people have this. Did you take care of what's at your house? You know, did you take care of yourself? Did you take care of your moon body? You know, like your left eye, the body, like, is your body okay? Just even that basic stuff. Like you're going out there trying to do that. There is a strong tendency with Virgo to fix everyone else's problem but themselves, but their own problem, which is hard.
Yeah, totally. I think that until the past year or two, like that's been like overwhelmingly correct. And I think this past year or two has been finally like working against that in a sense, not to like get rid of it, but to gain like that balance.
And you're 32 or 31. Yeah. So when you turned 30, you had a big year when you turned 30.
Yes.
And like, I know a little bit about it because I know you, but it was also just so much change. Like when I look at your chart, you moved into a 7th house perfection year, right? As you turned 30.
What does that mean?
That's a technique that involves, it's a very cool technique because it's one of the only things that you can know about someone's natal chart just by knowing someone's age.
Okay.
So you can say, oh, you're 24, like you're in a 1st house perfection year, or, you know, oh, you're 33, you're in a 10th house perfection year, like cool, good for you. You know, you can kind of know things about that. So knowing you're 31, I know you're in an 8th house perfection year.
Okay.
I also, that I know your chart, and I know what rising sign you have. I know, okay, well, in that year, you really changed what you value.
Oh, yeah.
You changed what you value, and you change how you communicate what you value. And you went to school about that to some extent. You schooled yourself, or you had people schooling you, or you had some type of like learning or education around that, around saying, okay, this is how I communicate. This is how I communicate what I need and what I value. This is how I do that.
Yeah.
It's different than before.
I feel like I had a huge awakening, and I started that. I think that was the first time in my life when I started putting myself first.
Wow.
And that's also when my father died, which has been one of the biggest impacts on my life thus far.
Yeah.
And has affected. Yeah.
I think because I think that event, the event of his death, shows up to some extent as the asteroid series in your 7th house there in Taurus. And so if I can characterize what losing him may have been like for you, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure this is hard to talk about, but I think there's an element of it's like you lost like an equal sort of, or like an other, you know, you lost like the partner. He doesn't really show up as like an authority in your chart. He shows up as someone who's just a loving other, and that it's equal.
Yeah, I think that he was probably the only loving other as far as family goes.
Yeah.
That I had.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was like a big thing.
And the way that event is showing up is in tight aspect with your son. So there's an element of, and I think you shared this with me, just that you felt really seen by your father, or
comparatively, yeah,
yeah, right,
for sure.
Yes, I mean, we'll also talk about like you've got some pretty good like family trauma signatures in your chart too, but there's yay for family trauma signatures. Yeah, like I think feeling comparatively seen, or feeling like the contract is sort of good enough. The contract that you had with him was passable. It kind of passed muster or whatever for you, you know, like he made the cut in a way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, which that's really special and interesting, but I think that's also, so yeah, that was a big year. And I imagine in some ways you're like still trying to get a handle on reevaluating, while also I think now you've probably had this year of like deep expansion, because you have your Jupiter in Gemini at 6 degrees of Gemini
this year
in your 8th house. Yeah, so from the day you turned 31 to now, so April to now, it's like, and that tracks a little bit with how I know you. It's like, you know, you did a film festival, you've actually been decently you've been working throughout the you know, throughout this you've been getting more data and information, and you've been dispensing this data and information, which is Gemini. So I think this year has been, and of course this is true for everybody, but to think about the transition from you having been in a Taurus year, you know, which is an anchor of your grand trine. So a year that had to do with what you value, with relationships, with love, with kind of art and beauty, to being this shift from when you turn 31, so from April to now, of being about more like data and information and ideas and learning new things and dialectic. So like, yeah, I mean, in this year you kind of propositioned me to be your co-host, Gemini, the twins, you know, like both doing something. I have to talk briefly, you know, about our synastry, throw something in there. Your Jupiter is right on top of my Mars, which is my ruling planet. So in this year, you approached me, but you know, you didn't do it the previous year. You did it this year.
And it's interesting because I've thought about it previously. Like I've thought about working with you previously. Right.
And we've had kind of moments of being in the same sphere or trying to work together, you know, and we have a little bit, but then this was the year that you were kind of like, this is when I'm going to go outside myself, have this contract with Shelby. So not that it's, I mean, it's verbal, but,
Hi there, sorry to cut off so abruptly, but we have a lot more to cover, and we are already an hour into this week's episode. So, we will be right back next week with the second half of digging into my Fancy Schmancy birth chart reading with Shelby. See you then.